But this is a crazy week because of my Instagram post getting deleted, because it's a really important week for Tamil people, and it was also the week that my dad passed away last week. So not last week, but it was a year anniversary. So in that sense, it's very important that it is a week of remembrance. And I know you want this to be a makeup tutorial, but you're not going to get that from me. Not yet. So I found my dad's book, The Monetary Exploitation. And one of the things I wanted to talk about is the censorship towards the Tamil people for their Remembrance Day is a start to, I think, what can happen and affect a lot of people around the world, and how we deal with things and what we're going to stand for and put up with. So, we can focus. Somebody wrote to me going, why do you always have to be a Tamil? And I don't have to be a Tamil. When I post about fucking Christmas, nobody's deleting it, and I'm neutral there, and I'm not saying, oh, you can only appreciate Christmas if you're a Tamil or somebody else. So I think that's a really it got me thinking about the reductive nature of everything, and how people want to put it in a box and be like, oh, you're only talking about this because you're a Tamil, and it's like, no. But this is why I wanted to talk about this book, The Monetary Exploitation, because this is what we're really going through. The Civil War is a byproduct of lots of imbalances which were caused by something that was age-old, thousands of years old, or hundreds of years of conflict, and yeah, we can fight about whether I can post a picture on Instagram right now of a flower and whether that's deemed acceptable by any community on social media, by 2 billion people that Mark Zuckerberg has access to. And we can fight over this flower and this picture, or me posting an image of the Tamil newsreader who was violently murdered and filmed and broadcasted on international mainstream media all across the world. So to give context to ignorance, and I think why the fear of suppressing resistance or remembering resistance and censorship is happening, and how this is supposed to taint the way you think about the way you would resist today, and the things that do need to be resisted. And you might think that this example is only applicable to Tamil people, but it just shows the level of dilution of your own, in your own lifetime. This only happened 10 years ago. And the fact that it's diluted from you being able to post a Tamil flag or a tiger flag, images of the war or the violence, and then you boil it down to a flower, and two colors, which is red and yellow, and even that is not allowed, or lighting a candle in the streets. So in Sri Lanka, they're destroying these plants, and the actual, the fiery gloria plant itself, which is nature, is being cut down and destroyed in the time where the rest of the world is going through COVID, and we're celebrating the the moment we get to appreciate nature and to invest time in that. So even in that sense, the technocrats who are now also our doctors, who are trying to fight for life and to save our lives and to save nature and climate change and, you know, the destruction of trees and animals and wildlife, etc. How do they support something that is an entity who would destroy nature just because it symbolizes like the perpetual conflict or racism that exists, you know? So it's not even for a good use. It's actually to let them oppress somebody through this act. So yeah, that was really confusing. So I'm going to read you one chapter, which is only like 4 pages long from my dad's book, but this really explained it. And I think this, it's talking about the problems we are facing now, which is unemployment, hunger, poverty, you know, the inequality of wealth and exploitation of human resources. So my dad wrote this book in the 90s, all right? And who on the planet right now is so good and so saintly that they would be so fair in distribution and governing the world in such an equal manner? You know, to distribute wealth, resources, opportunities, and confidence that this world has suffered from the lack of for thousands of years. The characters that are popping up as our leading think tank leaders, the digital leaders, the financial leaders, the medical leaders, you know, on the history of why we got to where we got to, and without showing pride and patriotism to whatever identity they do come from. Because what I got asked today on Instagram is, why do you have to post this picture of the Tamil Remembrance Day? Why? Why do you have to be a Tamil and be on about it? Like, being equal, like being non-person. And that's the great reset, is that you're just human and you don't have an identity. So it's not going to come from social media. exactly. The ego. Somebody said there's no chance of a great reset because the egos are too big. Yeah, I think the people who are bringing in the great reset haven't done their internal work on why they would be the fairest person to bring in the great reset and hold that torch for people. And you know, it's really difficult for me to say anything these days because sometimes I think, well, it's like it's hard to criticize because it's so infant. If it's in the infant stages where everybody's changing and everybody's learning, you know, but all we've done is create a breeding ground for opportunists who can exploit this faster than people take to evolve and learn and understand. And even my dad's book, the reason why no one's got this book is because every time my dad wrote a book and published it, the publishing houses would get destroyed and burnt down. So, you know, this one I'm not sure about what happened to it, but the book he wrote before this was burnt down. The printing house was burnt down. So my dad was never able to get his messages across. And it's literally censorship we see on a social media level. It's like, you know, in the 90s, my dad printed a map on the cover of his book, and the picture of a map was banned, so they burnt the whole publishing house down. And today, you can't post a flower on Instagram. So, this will be, I guess, one of my life work to find and digitize this and get it out to people and put it in libraries or figure out a way. Big tech. Long live the revolutionaries. Because you know, the interesting thing is comfort. Once you get comfort, then you don't want to fight. And then my dad's like, but everybody wants to be equal and people want comfort. People want enough money to be dignified and have what they want. And then if you get what you want, will you fight? So it's really important to keep your eye on what's happening now, to be like, what are you going to get? What you're going to get in a year's time, and what you're going to get in 5 years' time, and what you're going to get in 10 years' time. And, you know, are you being given this little bit of comfort so you don't fight next year when shit hits the fan for millions and millions of people, you know? Yeah. Yeah. my dad also was clever enough to the point that at any point in time he could have worked for exactly the system which helped destabilize so many poor countries. Like, my dad was smart enough and spoke enough languages and knew about agriculture and all of that stuff to cross over and offer himself to a system that kept other people down, but he never did, and he never compromised on that, no matter how much people ridiculed him. And so my dad also wrote a chapter on how you can achieve equality. And broke down the way the UN and the monetary exploitation chapter, this is why they always had a problem with my dad. But, you know, my dad's points were valid because it's UN who sold out. My dad didn't. My dad stayed true to his words to the end, and he survived on very little, lived in a little house, and left very little carbon footprint. And that's a fact. So anyway, he so his problem with the UN was that they sold out. It is a tragic experience for humanity that the UN and its agencies have ended up as the major defenders and promoters of the agenda of monetary exploitation, choosing to ignore its own proclamations that could have provided for its identification and eradication. The UN has become the forum that legitimizes the new agenda of domination. The alternative to the UN system and the global order it sustains is the fallback to direct colonial rule, replacing the indirect colonial rule that is embodied in the new global order. And my dad died 1 month before COVID started. So COVID started in January and my dad passed in December. And this was my dad's work. This was his life work. Questioning the validity and the intention for all of these institutions that have now risen to tell us what to do as the saviors and the champions of this. And my dad questioned this 20 years ago because he knew that that's what was going to happen, and it's happening. So I think this is a really, really important book to read, actually, for people who are interested in this shit. You know, just to ask the right questions. If you're into questioning things. So this is also why I'm not interested in the fucking politics, because it's bigger than that right now. And on a globe that's like this, you know, and we're bringing in a centralized government. So all of this individual stuff, like, yes, I'm a Tamil. I'm not going to gain or lose anything by saying that anymore if you have this one government at the top. You know, and they've already proved that they can't persecute war crimes or any illegal shit. They've already proved that. So that's who you've got in power. Yeah, the war has begun. We just don't know we're in it, but it has begun. And it's like, it's not about your political leader in your own country. Like, they're going through it. They can be replaced. And so this going inwards and changing yourself and your needs, this is the thing that my dad's talking about. He summed it up in terms of civilization and barbarianism. And the way he explained it to me was that in the ancient times, when we did have lots of resources and the population was controlled, one of the things he was saying is that, like poverty increases crime, poverty also increases population. It's a fact. So if you increase the poverty by exploitation, you're going to increase the population. So suddenly having like saviors like Bill Gates talk about population control and stuff like that, it's invalid when you're not addressing poverty at the same time. And what is the system that caused that poverty? And my dad's book really talks about the root of the problem and identifying the root of how these two streams of human evolution began, you know. So it's like barbarianism and civilization, and you have barbarianism comes out of an insecurity. So that's why the inferior superior mode of thinking is created, because one person feels inferior, therefore they have to say they're superior to even create that language. Whereas people who had no concept of inferior superior don't even think like that. So civilizations, I would consider, for example, in the ancient days, like in my culture, the Tamil culture, we built houses from clay mud, clay pots. We drank water from, wells. We'd figured out irrigation and farming without creating waste. And even when my mum buys sugar today, it comes wrapped up in palm tree leaves. It doesn't come in a plastic bag. And that's my life in Sri Lanka, I still remember like that, where it was very, you know, it's actually something like this. We used the palm tree leaf to make roofs, you know, walls, containers, cooking utensils, everything. This plant gave us a lot. And we were integrated into nature in that sense. And then we got taught that we were barbarians and uncivilized. And then we got given plastic, technology, concrete, you know, chemicals and all the waste, cheap washing machines, we, you know, which we cherish, which is why we don't want to have a revolution, because we think we've got a dishwasher, we're great. You know, we used, when I was a kid, I used charcoal to wash dishes. The ash from the fire is what you used to brush your teeth. And everything was like that. You know, now I have stuff that comes in plastic tubes, and I'm in this, you know, lifestyle where I get to be the civilized person, and I could go into a slum and pretend they're not civilized, and they're not civilized enough because they don't have stuff I have. And that was something my dad always said to me. So he always said, you know, just because you made money and you get to do those things, it doesn't mean you are living a civilized life. And it's true, and now I get what it meant. It's because I was creating a lot of waste, you know, and like, you become less aware of it, and you walk into your dressing room during a show and you have like 100 plastic bottles of water, and you don't think twice about it, you know. And it totally got to me that I was very flippant and mindless actually about it. And my dad would be like, no, the guy that lives in a hut, who fishes for his living, you know, who's using that one plate and that one spoon he's got, lives like he's in prison, that guy is actually civilized, because he's eliminated a lot of waste and needs and can control like what he needs in life. And I never really got that until now. So, on that note, I would like to leave you on that note to question the concept of progress and civilization and technological progress, and what that means, and why we need anything we need, and the rate we need it at, and how to be mindful of ancient cultures that were more sustainable now more than ever. How to, you know, so that post I did about Remembrance Day, yeah, I don't want to constantly remember tragedy either, and horrific incidents and images, and obviously it is about progress and, you know, forgiving and I understand all that. So I would like to not post it, but at the same time, it doesn't, for me, it's not the be all and end all of the definition of what a Tamil person is and what they come from. And I also know the dangers, if any Tamil people are listening to this, you know, that we ourselves have forgotten a lot of good things about our own culture, and that there are Tamils who are not mindful or conscious of how to move forward, carrying like the best qualities of what we had and what we came from. And, you know, it's not in my plan to be constantly locking heads and remembering the Sri Lankan government and all the atrocities and this and that. It's like, that's not what I want to be remembering Tamils by either. So I just would like to not be censored when I post a fucking picture of a flower. And, you know, what that did was just trigger me into thinking about what the fuck they're going to censor on social media to do with anything. And that includes everyone. And yeah, I guess if it's a fight, then that's a fight. Because if that is the moment we're in, this is the moment in time that we're in, where we have to address that, and it's actually a collective experience, like I'm censored as much as you're censored, then we're all in it together, you know. And we can't really sit around for too long. On that note, vanakkam. Thank you for spending time with me today. And